So we are now reporting. Okay, the main meeting of the Wharf District Council. And we have a wonderful agenda this evening that perhaps you've all received. We're going to start out with Officer Ciampa's report on what's been going on in the Wharf District since we last met. Officer?
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Yeah, Sergeant Moy had something going on with his family tonight, so I'll be running the meeting for the first time. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Happy to.
I believe it's been a short month. I think the last time we met was the
April
27th of April.
Yeah.
So it's pretty light. Even though despite the weather getting better, things opening up, many people are out. I've taken some walks, and, the North End is packed down to the Wharf, especially Friday, Saturday nights. People are out, obviously. And, the weather, the restrictions being lifted, I would imagine to continue to see that. But still, despite all that, it's been pretty light given the 3 weeks. We had no arrest in the district, in the Wharf area, believe it or not. Just a quick thing to touch upon, 200 State Street, the Banana Republic is getting hit pretty hard. I'm not going to get into the reports individually, but they're all very similar. They're getting hit pretty hard. So the larcenies are up in that Faneuil Hall kind of merchandise area, So that's something we'll be monitoring. The first report is from May 17th, around 3 p.m. One of our officers performed a motor vehicle stop right at Atlantic Ave, going into Christopher Columbus Park. The officer was actually planning to patrol the park, seeing all the community complaints, the noise complaints, the homeless, drug use, public drinking, and stuff like that. Because we have many children in there trying to play, especially with the weather getting nicer. So as the officer tried to pull in to the park and patrol, an individual rolled his window down and started swearing at the officer because he drove into the park, shouting, obscene language towards him. And the officer ended up running the license plate, and the plate, believe it or not, the driver, his license came back expired. So the officer did perform a traffic stop and confirmed that the driver's license did in fact expire a month prior. There was no further issue. The officer did summons them into court. They parked the motor vehicle safely. Just a few things here. I mean, our officers are out patrolling that park, which I was pleased to see. So that is pretty active. And it's not a good idea really to be shouting at the police while they're going into the park, trying to patrol, which especially when you have an expired driver's license, it's really not a good idea. So, hey, you know what? It is what it is. But I thought that was pretty interesting, and it was pleased to see that our officers are out in the park trying to do the best we can with the homeless situation and everything going on in the park. Second report, around midnight, a little past midnight on a Saturday night, on May 8th at the Intercontinental Hotel, officers responded to an assault and battery in progress. The officers were approached by the caller and her friend. Seemed like they went out for her birthday to have some dinner and drinks. The caller was very upset, crying. She was in the car with her two friends, one whom she was still with at the time when the officers approached. And they got in a verbal argument over another friend. I don't know if it was about a relationship type of thing, but she was struck in the face several times while parked in front of the hotel. Officers didn't observe any injuries to their eye, but EMS was declined also. It just seemed like a bad night out. But it happened right in front of one of our hotels. The officers did escort her to receive her belongings from the hotel room, which was her friend's room, which she had been in the confrontation with. There was no further incident. Just a quick report on that, just a document. Our next report was also, early morning. This also happened early May 10th. Officers responded to a call for a person screaming, and that was at 357 Commercial Street. And the officers spoke with witnesses at first, and they observed a female being robbed of her cell phone outside. The officers did believe that the female was intoxicated or on drugs. The officers also did speak with a few witnesses in the area of the Battery Wharf. They basically explained this girl was arguing with a male, and the male grabbed her phone and took off running. And the officers did eventually speak with the victim. She explained that it had been an ongoing on and off relationship. This was her boyfriend, kind of, who had grabbed her phone, and she stated that he grabbed her phone because his was broken, but he somehow, for some reason, decided to steal it and take it permanently. Her main concern was that all her information, credit cards, debit cards, all her bank information was on the phone. As officers and detectives look further into the incident, it did get pretty physical. So that kind of opens up a whole nother can of worms. It wasn't just, a robbery, but it was also a domestic incident there. So the officers will be continuing to investigate. I have two more here. One was on May 1st at almost 9:00 p.m. We did have a protest. I'm not sure if the department knew about it or not, but it was about 50 to 60 individuals with Black Lives Matter and USSR flags. And they congregated right at the Congress Street side of Faneuil Hall by the Samuel Adams statue. This group also had a red pickup truck that seemed to be leading the way. The truck drove up onto the sidewalk directly in front of the Sam Adams statue, and the protest ensued. One individual, which is the problem with these protests, in my opinion, you could have most of them are peaceful, and that's great, but it really only does take one. And one of the individuals got out, and he started spray painting all around the statue and on the statue. He spray painted "Class War Now." So, this is a statue that's been around forever, to kind of go about a protest and defacing a statue like that. Just, it's just out of line. But like I said, it only takes one. The group eventually dispersed. It didn't seem like a long protest according to my notes here. It was about a 25-minute protest. Everything was recorded through City Hall cameras. So area detectives will be continuing to investigate. And lastly, we have 3:30 in the afternoon on a Sunday, May 2nd. Officers responded to a call for a person stabbed at 111 Atlantic Ave. And the officers were led into the building. They spoke to multiple witnesses. They also spoke with the victim, who had numerous cuts. And from the officer's report here, it appeared to be self-inflicted. When they spoke with this victim, she kept changing her story. From what I'm reading here, it seemed like she stated it was self-inflicted, and then she brought up that she was stabbed. And once again, I don't know if this was a mental health issue or if she was intoxicated or on drugs. But it did appear that it was self-inflicted, even though her story kept changing. Also here, it states that she is being evicted, and I think this is a problem unit within the building. So, numerous calls at this location, numerous disturbances. So, detectives will still follow up, but they did take her to the hospital where she was treated and given a mental health evaluation. But, it thankfully, it didn't seem like a stabbing. It just seemed like this lady needed some help. And hopefully she gets what she needs, the right type of mental assistance. That's all I have. Those are probably the 5 most prominent reports that I've gone through, other than the continuous larcenies, which are just kind of like I said, all the same. They're just kind of going into these places, whether they're trying to sign up for a rewards card, distracting the clerk, and then just kind of just taking everything off the shelf and running. And that's all in the Faneuil Hall area. That's really all I have. Knock on wood, nothing, no arrests, nothing too violent. But if you guys have any questions, like I said, this is the first time I'm doing this. So if there's anything I missed or any questions you guys have for me or the department, I know Sergeant Moy isn't here, but I gladly try to answer anything that I could.
Well, Officer, I think you did a great job, and thank you for doing what you do. And by the way, I don't know what the rest of your what the rest of Boston is going through, but that sounds like a pretty good report to me. It sounds like you're keeping our area pretty safe.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, I expect, as does everybody, many people to be out, with everything being relaxed and the weather. It's just going to seem like a perfect storm to really get us working hard, So hopefully, our guys out on the street can continue to do what they do. And, If you need anything, I'm here. Hopefully you guys have my cell phone number to reach me directly. Please don't hesitate. And, that's it.
Much appreciated. Any questions for Officer Champa? Great. Thank you again for being here and for everything.
Of course.
Thank you.
We are next joined by a first-time guest in his current position, Chris Cook, who's the executive now of the Greenway Conservancy. Chris Cook, welcome, and we look forward to hearing about your plans for the Greenway, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you, Suzanne, and to the entire Wharf District Council for having me. I will try to be as brief as possible, but when I'm talking about parks and arts, I get excited and I tend to get carried away. So just very quickly, before I get into the thank yous with some of your members, I do have to thank A1. And I want to check with you, Mark, is my volume okay for you?
You can probably bring it down a little bit. But...
Yeah, you got it. So I just want to thank A1 in the limited time that I've been here, but also throughout my 15 years with the city of Boston, especially where a big chunk of that was with the Parks Department and special events. A1 has always been an incredible partner for me personally. And now when I've seen their interactions with the Greenway and in the Wharf District itself, these are not easy jobs that the Boston police have. It's complicated by the fact that these are also major tourist destinations that exist within an ecosystem of neighborhoods. And the fact that they're able to navigate that and partner with us as we activate these spaces, just incredibly grateful to the captain, to the sergeant, and to you as well, officer. So thank you very much for that.
You have.
Great. Oh, Kelly, how you doing? It's good to hear from you. So the other thing I want to note is that I'm fully cognizant that I come into this role with a little bit of history that may be familiar to some of those on this call, but I think it'd be important for me to share a little bit, if it's okay, Mark, what I'm bringing into this position. So immediately prior to this job, I was the chief of environment, energy, and open space for the city of Boston, and I was largely responsible for the city's climate adaptation as well as carbon neutrality goals. Prior to that, I was responsible for the Boston Park System as the Parks Commissioner under Martin J. Walsh. And so, you know, I had care and custody for 330 properties as diverse as golf courses and Boston Common and historic burial grounds. And through that, I really had an appreciation of the role that parks play both in our climate adaptation strategies, but also in the real importance of providing passive recreation and mental health break to our residents. So one thing that I was very proud of during that time is we actually achieved 100% of our residents being within a 10-minute walk to a park, which is a goal that the Trust for Public Land had stated for parks equity. And we actually celebrated that milestone in the district. We actually celebrated at Joanne's Park at Christopher Columbus Waterfront Park. We celebrated hitting that milestone of 100% of our residents living within a 10-minute walk to a park. But before I was Parks Commissioner, I was actually the director of an office for Mayor Thomas M. Menino called Arts, Tourism, and Special Events, and had the responsibility of permitting and producing more than 200 events annually within the city, both from a production standpoint, but also from a coordination standpoint, you know, working with the Special Events Committee to make those events possible. And within that office, we also had responsibility for arts programming in the city, whether it was the Boston Art Commission or the Mayor's Mural Crew or other activations or managing the Strand Theater in Dorchester. So all of this is a long way of saying is I see this as a culmination of working within the city, understanding how wonderful and diverse our city is and how the Greenway itself presents an incredible opportunity to make sure that we activate this and continue to activate this space at the highest level with world-class public art, but also never lose sight of the fact that this major tourist destination happens within a neighborhood, and that's your neighborhood. And so there are many, many times where people come from out of town to see the public art or to come to a special event in the city, and that's very important for some of your members. It's certainly important to drive hospitality dollars and tourism dollars into the district. But the rest of the time, and even during those times, the park has to achieve at a very high level being a neighborhood park. And that's something that I take very seriously. So hopefully I will be an often and frequent face at your meetings. When I come too much, just let me know and we can hang back. But I go off the basis that over communication is always better than under communication. So I couldn't be happier to be in this role. I do also want to acknowledge, as I acknowledged A1, I want to thank some of the city people who will be coming on presenting different items. You know, I know Ashley and Zach are going to be talking about State Street shortly. You know, Joe Christo is on this call. I know he's always a participant, you know, keeping track of the different climate adaptation initiatives that Wharf District Council is involved in. And John Romano, of course, who does such a great job of connecting all the dots within the district. The reason I want to mention them is I want to acknowledge how hard city workers have worked over the past year. This has been an extraordinarily stressful year for everybody, but within the city context, having a front row seat to it, you know, as folks like Zach and folks like Joe and folks like John, who are really doing 3 different versions of their job during COVID-19, whether it was, you know, making sure that restaurants can extend their premises to try to accommodate customers with the restrictions, or providing food distribution centers, or setting up shelters, you know, all of which BPDA, Public Works, and Office of Neighborhood Services assisted with. It was just an extraordinary time to have a front row seat to that public service. And I'm proud that I'm going to be associated with a nonprofit that's going to continue to work so closely with those city workers, especially the ones that happen to be on this call tonight. I also want to acknowledge Rachel Lake, who I know has done a good job as far as outreach on the Rose Kennedy Greenway Conservative, you know, routinely coming to these meetings. I know recently she previewed the programming for all of you that's upcoming on the Greenway. I will say I'm trying to restrain my excitement about the governor and the mayor's announcement, because I do think the fact that the restrictions are easing up lends itself to a very exciting and dynamic summer on the Greenway. So we are excited about the fact that we will have a full slate of programming, largely without restrictions. Of course, we want to make sure that everyone is as comfortable as possible. So as further guidance gets dictated, we will immediately fall in line with that, should that be the case. But going off the governor and the mayor's announcement, it does mean that the Greenway experience this summer will largely feel a lot like the Greenway experience that we've had in years past, with the exception of last year. With that being said, Marc, is it okay if I share my screen very briefly?
Please do.
I just want to give a few highlights of what we have coming up. So this doesn't look like much today, but this is the, and can you see my screen, Marc?
Yep, yep.
So this is the site where Trillium will be. And although it looks like plywood and sawhorses today, this Thursday, Trillium will be open. And so that's an exciting time in the city, and it feels like a rite of passage. You know, I promised to spend an appropriate amount of time there after 5. So if anyone would like to come join me and see me, I will be down there after 5, definitely. So we're excited about that. It is on track to open. And then of course, Trillium as their own business can make their own decisions, and we will partner with them, whatever they and their workers feel comfortable with. But we suspect with the lifting of restrictions on May 29th, that they will largely be at full capacity. We believe they'll make that decision. Of course, they're still reviewing what that guidance in yesterday's announcement means for them, but we will fully support their decisions. If you haven't seen it yet, the Daniel Gordon mural is finished. Like I said, the art of, you might have heard me earlier on in this Zoom, the artist does have some finishing notes that he wants some things fixed up, but it is an incredibly impressive mural. The exciting thing about Daniel Gordon, I know Rachel previewed this for you before, is that this is the first time an artist has been featured throughout the entire length of the park. And so as you start to look at our banners, as you start to look at some of our other installations throughout the park, there'll be versions of Daniel's work. And it's really bright and colorful. And if it's if our artist curator, Lucas Cowan, actually had a crystal ball and knew what we were all gonna need coming out of the pandemic. It feels fun, it feels vibrant, and it feels like it's alive. So we're very excited that this mural is completed, and we're really excited if you all come down and visit. I was down there the other day. Bob Gordon and Doris, who I know are on the call tonight, they came down and visited the installation as it was progressing. And of course, they're a big reason, you know, why we have public art on the Greenway in the first place. And so, you know, if you haven't seen it yet, it's worth the walk down to Dewey Square. But of course, there'll be other amazing, brilliant examples of Daniel's work throughout the park. And then the last highlight I wanted to share with all of you, because it has felt like a fairly disruptive construction site for the past time being, is the Rings Fountain. The work there is complete. And so that's very exciting. The fountain will be on for Memorial Day. This is an image taken from one of the cameras that's near the fountain. And one of the exciting parts about this work is that the masonry work to replace the stones is actually handled in-house by Rose Kennedy Greenway workers themselves. Of course, they have a crane operator to assist them with the stones. But this is the kind of skilled labor that exists within the Conservancy, which is very exciting. So we're excited to see this project illuminated. We're excited to have it fully open on Memorial Day. And of course, that coincides with all the city parks fountains, including the fountains over at Christopher Columbus Waterfront Park that typically go on that weekend. And then certainly if the weather continues like it has, that will be a welcome opportunity. So those are 3 highlights that are directly related to the district. You know, again, I hope to be a frequent visitor. I'll stop screen sharing now, But I also am available for any questions if anyone has them now, Mark. I'm happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you, Chris. It's always good to know that there's exciting stuff planned on the Greenway, and nice to know that we're going to be able to take advantage of it. You're still sharing if you want to, you're still screen sharing.
Oh, thank you. I'll turn that off. Sorry.
Okay. Questions for Chris. And I guess my first question was, do you have any initiatives in mind at the moment that are different or unique to your own vision? Still sharing. Yeah,
I apologize, Mark. I'm just trying to turn that off, and I minimized it so it's not.
No, you got to go down to the bottom of your screen and hit share screen middle. Maybe I don't know. No, I can't.
Well, in the meantime, I'll keep talking as I keep messing around with that. I apologize. So one of the, thank you. Thank you very much. So one of the large concepts that I have is understanding how the Greenway can be a force for good, even beyond itself. And what I mean by that is there's a standard of excellence that Jesse Brackenberry and the entire team, including the board, and of course, Susanne, incredibly grateful for the service you provide on our board, has achieved at the Rose Kennedy Greenway. You know, it is matched within the city by other extraordinary Parks Friends groups like Joanne's group over at Friends of Christopher Columbus Park, the Friends of the Public Garden. But there are other systems, there's other open spaces within the city where I think there is opportunities for information sharing. I think there's opportunities where we could lend our horticultural expertise. I think there's opportunities for arts and programming partnerships. So understanding how we can link it to some of those other open space networks, understanding what are the needs of those neighborhoods, and understanding how we can lift the public realm throughout our city. The other thing that I think Jesse has laid an extraordinary foundation for is making sure that the Greenway is climate ready. You know, the climate resilience study that the Greenway undertook was largely about the Greenway as an asset itself and as a cultural asset, but also is there an opportunity to link up with the work of folks like Joe Christo in the city and others, and frankly, the work of the Wharf District Council, and saying, are there design changes, are there design elements that provide high recreational value, but also provide enhanced public realm to make our city more resilient? So given my background and given the amount of insight and expertise that I've been exposed to through prior jobs, that is work that I really hope to lean into, you know, and understand that our role and responsibility of the city, while is very, very central, and frankly, we have a very strong fiduciary responsibility to the Greenway itself, you know, and actually the physical realm of there, but our role and responsibility doesn't end at that curb cut. You know, our role and responsibility extends beyond that curb cut. And so how can we make the city better beyond just the Greenway? So that's work that I really like to focus on. And then I do think there's opportunities. The public art program is frankly second to none. And I think it's really changed the opinion of Boston in the arts world and in the art scene. That doesn't mean that we don't have more work to do. And so I think we can still continue to go big and bold with our public art program and really set the standard for leadership, not only for Boston, but in New England. When you start to look at the canvas that we provide artists at Dewey Square, you'd be hard pressed to find a bigger canvas than the vent stack. And so I think you know, how can we build on that success and really, really drive Boston as an arts destination? So those are three that pop to the top of my head.
Yeah, great. And thank you for agreeing to join our Climate Resilience Task Force. We'll talk about that shortly, but we will have a meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks, and I look forward to your being a part of that.
No, you're very welcome. And just to be clear, you know, I didn't agree to it. I'm honored to be part of it. So thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Who else has questions for Chris that I'm sure he will be joining us regularly, but is there any specific questions we want to ask?
John Larrabee here, Chris. One question, and I know that the Greenway has done some of this, but what about outreach to other parts of the city, bringing those neighborhoods to the park, to the Greenway?
Yeah, so John, I think that's really, really critical, frankly, to the funding sustainability of the Greenway long term, and I'll explain why. More and more of the philanthropic support, and you know, I'm sure Rick Musel can talk about this in the New England Aquarium, more and more of the philanthropic network in Boston is concerned with social equity and the idea of access to socially vulnerable neighborhoods. And so there's two different ways to approach that. One is the programming that we're providing. You know, how do you make programming relevant enough that those audiences feel welcome? And then there's also the physical connections to the park. And that's something that I'm certainly, you know, more comfortable, and it's been part of my life's work, you know, connecting open spaces within the city. But when I start to look at opportunities, you know, such as the South Bay Harbor Trail and the ability for us to finally realize that in full vision and how that would connect Dorchester, Roxbury, and South Boston to this amazing asset. And likewise, you know, when the bridge work is completed in the North End, are we intentionally reaching out to Charlestown? Are we having biking tours? Are we having opportunities for people to realize how close this asset is to their home? So there's a physical realm portion to this, and there's a programming realm support to this. The last thing I would say on that, though, is we also have to celebrate the moments of inclusivity that already happen on the Greenway. And so as you start to look at places like the Rings Fountain, where, you know, it's very much like the Frog Pond to Boston Common, where at any given moment, you see all of Boston, and it's, you know, it's beautiful tapestry reflected right there in that amazing public realm. The more that we can create a sense of, replicate that sense of inclusivity that exists in that place and really celebrate what is working well at the Greenway, I think we will connect to those audiences.
Great. Chris, thank you very much for joining us. And we wish you absolutely nothing but success. And I have to echo your words of thanks to Doris and Bob Gordon for their support of the arts on the Greenway, which is such a treasure to us all. And we know you'll take it all to new heights. But thank you, Rachel, and looking forward to a very fruitful relationship with the Wharf District Council.
No, that's so great, Mark. And the last thing I'll do is I'll drop my email in the chat in case anyone wants to send me an email. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Great. Perfect. So we're going to move next to a conversation with Ashley Biggins and Zach. Zach Wasmouth, who's going to talk with us about State Street. And obviously, everybody knows that we have the Wharf District has a strong position and is actively involved in this conversation. And we had a conversation last week. And we're looking forward to the seeing what progress we have. And I think Ashley is there, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Ashley?
Hi, Mark. Sorry, I was muted for a second there.
That's quite right.
I get a little bit of a new setup also. I'm in the office today. Yeah. So thanks for giving us some time to talk about State Street. I also want to take a minute to thank Chris for his kind words. It has been a really, really wild year, and it's nice to see sort of a light at the end of the tunnel, and to, to hear that the parks are going to be back and that there's going to be some nice art this summer. Yeah. So anyway, myself and Zach, who is another engineer with the Public Works Department, are here to talk about State Street. Currently, we have the temporary pavement markings out there, and the biggest update we have is we're making some minor changes based on community feedback, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the long-term goals of the project, which are changing a little bit because of COVID and also from your input. So I'm going to turn it over to Zach.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Ashley, for the introduction. And thank you to Chris as well for the shout out. And I think, all that great stuff happening on the Greenway is fantastic and everything. And we're really happy about that. And I think it's actually great that we're following that, because I feel, Chris was alluding to, access and everything. And I feel like, State Street is, connectivity to the Greenway, to and from the Greenway, is something that's, a critical part of this project that we want to make sure that we embrace. If it's okay with you, Marc, I'd like to go ahead and share my screen.
I think you can try. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay, good.
And you should be seeing a presentation, and I'll try and put it in presentation mode. And here we go. Okay, so anyway, yeah, thank you. I know some of you have seen basically the same presentation last week that Marc alluded to. Many of you on the call had seen this, but I know that many of you weren't able to see this. So we just want to run through this. We got some feedback last week on that, and we'll continue to, have a conversation with you guys about State Street. We thank you very much for your involvement with this project. And, we want you to know that we share a common goal to make this project as successful as possible. As Ashley stated, we want to provide an update to where we are in the project, and just address some of the concerns that have been raised to this point. Just a brief going over the outline of this presentation. We're going to go over the project need, that we've discussed before, and discuss the pilot project that was implemented over the past year, and more importantly, the feedback that we've received from you to date. And then, as Ashley alluded to, we'd like to implement some adjustments to the design based on what we've observed and what we've heard from you from feedback. And then we want to jump ahead to thinking about where we want to go with the final design. We haven't started the final design; we haven't begun that yet. But we wanted to sort of talk about our overall thinking about what our approach will be. And then we'll dive into sort of what the next steps were, and we can obviously open it up for Q&A. So jumping right into the project need portion, I think one of the key components that's obvious to everybody, you guys are out here every day, Ashley and I have been back in the office lately, and we see this more and more as, we need to bring the street up into a state of good repair. We have sidewalks here that, you can see from these that are challenging for people, especially persons with disabilities, but people of all abilities. They're narrow, and, their condition leaves something to be desired. So we definitely want to make sure that we address the state of disrepair and bring it into a state of good repair. And I think that that's something that we all certainly agree on as far as one of the goals of this project. And then, also talking about this project is, we want to make a long-term investment out here when we do come out here. Obviously, we want to make those improvements to the sidewalk and address that need, but we want to improve the overall user experience for the street. And we want to improve that experience for all users. Currently now, as I mentioned, there's narrow sidewalks. You can see from this graphic with, this was obviously pre-COVID, but, walking around today, there were a fair amount of people walking around and everything. And, with things opening up, we expect more of that to be happening. So the sidewalks are narrow. The roadway width, previously was sort of undefined. So it was kind of a free for all out there with, loading and driving and that type of thing, and double parking and all of that. And, so that unorganized space kind of creates unpredictable behaviors and creates congestion at certain points in time and everything like that. So, that was one of the challenges that we saw from the onset of this project. You know, one of the critical components, of course, that we look at with any project, which is why this is brought to the forefront here, is safety. You know, here's just a snapshot of some safety data that we collected from, you know, again, pre-COVID numbers. You know, the number of crashes on the street was 37. 69% of the injury crashes involved either bicyclists or pedestrians, which are the most vulnerable users. And the street is on Boston's high crash network, which means it's in the top 3% for crashes and top 7% for crashes of all modes. If you take a look, you know, what does 37 crashes mean? You know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, in the transportation business, so to speak, we try to normalize that. So we do a crash rate, and that's per million entering vehicles. So that kind of normalizes the rate of crashes. So how does that stack up? So when you do that calculation with the 37 there over this time period and the traffic volumes out there, we're getting about 8.5 crashes per million entering vehicles. The state average for a similar type street, you know, a street of this type is 3.5 per million entering vehicles. So, you know, the number of crashes here is somewhat concerning, which is why we're trying to look at these safety components, because it's 2.5 times the state average. So it's just something that we want to look at. We want to look at the safety. We want to look at this experience and everything. For all users as we take a look at this street and really think about what the opportunities are. So next we'll kind of jump into where we are in the pilot project.
This is State Street.
And where we are. So we, as you know, last summer we I'm getting a little feedback.
Could everybody mute, please, who's not speaking?
Thanks. Sorry, I assumed other folks were having similar issues. Anyway, yeah. So last summer, as you know, we installed the pilot project, and then in the fall, we installed we updated that pilot project, and we provided some more defined space for vehicles and motorists and loading and that type of thing. After we installed that, we heard some concerns from your group and from others, and you know, those are listed here. Concerns about emergency vehicle access with the single lane, and also some turning movements on Broad Street. There was desire expressed by some with respect to taking out one of the travel lanes for the bike lane, and a request to remove that bike lane. There were concerns about the egress from Butler Row, and actually you can see in this photo that was actually provided from some of the abutters at some of the meetings that you guys raised concern to us. There's this little alley, Butler Row, and there's some parking and stuff that goes on behind here at number 92. And you know, as you can see here with some of the loading, you know, this area is designated for, you know, for loading, but obviously this area is not. So it makes a challenge when people, you know, park in the zones where they're not supposed to and everything, limited sight distance. So we certainly acknowledge that. And then, you know, there was, you know, some concern certainly about the allocation of the loading spaces that were provided. And also, you know, again, concern about the single vehicle lane. You know, we had looked into this and implemented this pilot during COVID. Obviously, traffic volumes are down. They're down like more than like 50%. We'll see how things go. You know, now that things are opening up, now that Charlie Baker's made an announcement and everything. So there's obviously, you know, little legitimate concerns like, hey, this may be working now with one lane, but what happens, you know, if traffic comes back, and what happens with queuing? Is it going to back up on the surface road? So, you know, this is some of the stuff. This is why we implemented the pilot. You know, we had crunched some numbers and everything. We wanted to see how this is working, but we fully acknowledge that obviously this is during when traffic volumes are low and everything like that. And then obviously, you know, over the winter, snow removal, how's that working? And then, you know, what congestion does that have when, you know, we have limited space to get snow out there? What if we get a 2-foot storm, and where does that go? And of course, here is the concept that we received from you at the Wharf District Council for the 2-lane approach that you sent to us, and obviously many folks had sent letters to us requesting this. So you know, just to acknowledge some of the obvious things that we've heard from you. Another thing that we've heard, of course, is when we launched the pilot project, we sent out a survey. We had close to 200. We had 199 respondents to the survey. Of those 199, 124 people responded to this particular question, which was, what aspects of the project pilot do you support? As you can see here, many folks did support the increased space for bicyclists, increased space for pedestrians, and the reduced road width. Obviously, these folks aren't all from, the Wharf district. There's at least half of them were from Boston, and then a little less than half were from the Metro Boston area that actually responded to this question. But, just to give a sense of some of the stuff that the city has been hearing, we've certainly heard the concerns from this group and the abutters and everything, and we've heard these comments as well from people that have taken our survey. So, it's our job as city officials, obviously, to take all this stuff in and to help the balance and have a balanced approach of what we can do with the street, and try and figure out how we can, accomplish something that really makes State Street function for all users, as we mentioned in the beginning. So based on these, what we've heard and everything, I would like to jump into what we'd like to look at for some shorter term adjustments. What you're seeing here is the current configuration in this block of State Street between Broad Street and Merchants Row. You can see, Al's and Dunkin' Donuts at those locations. And as you can see here, we had put the loading zone on the north side of State Street in front of 100 State, in front of Al's. But that only allows for space for 3 vehicles to legally park. And as you saw from the photo, and and what we've observed and everything, folks are also parking in those other or loading temporarily in those other hatched areas, and it doesn't provide that much space. So and there were concerns about the overall supply of legal loading spaces, the access from Butler Row, as you can see here, coming out, and and the visibility with even with these legally parked vehicles, how can you see coming out of that turn and everything, and this movement coming out if people are parked over here. So we wanted to take a second look at that, and here's one of the things that we're looking at for short-term improvement that we'd like to implement. Very, very soon. Obviously, we want to make sure we get your feedback on it, but we'd like to transfer the loading, which is currently on the north side of the street, and switch it to the south side of the street. This gives us the opportunity to, the three spaces on that side that we can now increase that to 7 spaces, and allows less concerning with the move from here from Broad Street, as well as gives better visibility for the move outside of Butler Row. So we'd like to see about implementing that as soon as possible within the next several weeks to the month, so that we can make that improvement. Hopefully that'll be a improvement to State Street and the loading operations. Another thing that we're looking at is taking a look at the traffic flow concerns. Again, with things opening up, again, we're constantly monitoring the situation. We want to make sure that we have an understanding of the traffic. Is there going to be more traffic with things opening up? We predict that that's true, but how much more? We're all keeping an eye on it. This is certainly a very interesting time, for many aspects, but certainly for transportation. So one of the things that we were looking at for potentially alleviating some of the traffic demand on State Street was reversing the direction of Central Street. Currently, as I'm sure you're aware, Central Street between India and the surface road currently goes out in the easterly direction. And so we wanted to propose turning in this direction. That gives another option for folks, coming down State Street. And we've observed fairly heavy movements turning onto Broad Street. A lot of folks want to access the parking garage here, which is the Star. So it gives another opportunity for folks to access, and they can come up and go this way. So taking some of the demand, some of the traffic volumes off of State Street may alleviate some of the traffic and congestion concerns that we've been observing, and just give some folks other options here. Because obviously, as you've all noted, the east-west connections in this area are limited. So we want to make sure that we're balancing that with different types of options. So those are some of the short-term things that we're hoping to implement. Obviously, we want to make sure that we have a discussion specifically with the abutters down here on Central Street, so that we can understand before we would make any of those changes. And obviously, for both of these things, we want to get feedback from you. But we're hoping that we can implement these things, as I said, fairly soon, so that we can make some shorter-term improvements out there. Now, jumping ahead to some of the long-term stuff that we're looking at. Again, I want to stress that we haven't begun anything with any sort of final design. We're still monitoring the situation. Obviously, COVID's thrown us for a loop here over the past year, and we definitely don't want to get started, doing anything until we have a good grasp on it. That being said, we definitely want to make sure that we continue to take a look at this situation and design for flexibility and adaptability, which is the point number 2 here. But point number 1 is providing 2 barrels, what we'll say, and I'll get into that more specifically in the next couple slides, of travel for the full length of State Street. So providing a design that really has that flexibility. So whether it's a bike lane, whether it's a travel lane and everything, we want to look at the space that we have, allocate, maximize, and I think that was paramount to the stuff that was sent from the Wharf District Council, is really, maximizing that sidewalk space where we can, but then providing that roadway space and then figuring out how to program that space. And then we can supplement those barrels of travel with, with the wider sidewalks, with loading where feasible, and really kind of carve out that space. But we want to make sure that we have that constant width, that we can have that adaptability. And then we want to look at, as I alluded to with the Central Street, we also want to look at the possibility of Chatham Street and giving options for folks to not necessarily use State Street to get to the destination. If folks want to get to the parking garage, maybe we can look at also reversing the direction of Chatham Street. Obviously, this is a challenge to do right now because of the outdoor dining and everything, and that's what we need to balance. So that's why we're not looking at it as a short-term solution, but maybe as a longer-term solution, something that we are certainly looking at. So again, jumping to the next slide, what do we mean by these 2 barrels? And you see here, this is State Street, and you see these 2 arrows representing what we're calling the 2 barrels for State Street. So these 2 barrels would be enough width to allow for either 2 travel lanes or a travel lane and a bicycle facility. And we'd still have, as we do in the pilot here, open it up to the 3 lanes at the Congress Street intersection, which is really what meters the traffic for the whole for the whole corridor, right? So we really need to make sure that we have that capacity there, so that we can process the traffic through. And if we can manage the traffic, down here at Congress Street through the signal and by having the appropriate number of lanes, then we can obviously manage the traffic throughout the corridor as a whole. So, looking at adaptability so that we can figure out exactly how we want to program this, and then we can fill in the blanks with, where we have this extra space and take that for potential widening of sidewalks and that type of thing. And then, here's just a photo of the famous pinch point down at the Ginger Man that we've talked about. And, the flexible design means that it could be either or, right? We want to provide enough width that we can get sidewalk space on either side. This is the most, again, this is the most constrained location, and provide a minimum width so that we can potentially have 2 travel lanes here, or we can potentially have a bicycle facility here, and we can really balance that. And that functionality, is something that we still need to think about, but it's just something that, will be supported by data, and we'll continue to monitor that situation. We want to make sure that we have the flexibility, but we also want to maximize what we can do for the sidewalk and everything for this project. And then here's just taking a look at what was mentioned before in the previous slide. I already mentioned to you potentially our short-term plan of reversing the direction on Central Street. Longer term, we'd also like to look at reversing the direction on Chatham Street, which gives access to this garage as well. So then folks come take the right on the commercial and alleviate some of that traffic. So now, you have this option if you're going all the way, but if you want to peel off earlier to get over to Broad, or if you want to get up to the parking garage here, now you have those options. So it takes some of the congestion off of State Street. So again, Interested in your feedback on all of these approaches, but this is just some of the stuff that we've been thinking about flexibility in design, thinking about how we can monitor these situations and kind of some of our options based on some of the concerns that you've heard and some of the things that we've observed out there. So what's next? We want to continue monitoring the usage of the barrels of the functionality of the street. So there's no question now with things opening up again, as I've mentioned several times, and we've been monitoring the situation, you know, ever since it's been implemented. But we want to continue to monitor the usage of the street and figure out what's going on out there, measuring traffic volumes and all that type of thing. And we'll get into a little bit more specifics on the next slide. We would like to implement those adjustments to the pilot, you know, as soon as we can, hopefully, you know, this spring. And then we would like to start initiating some designs, not necessarily like the final design, but some project elements that are independent of the barrels. I think we all recognize that there are opportunities like right here in front of Serbia and the Century Bank here. You know, if we can provide these 2 barrels of space, we can still take a look at, you know, what we can do to maximize, you know, sidewalk space, and that lends itself to potentially outdoor seating, which I believe Serbia was interested in, things of that nature. So we want to start, you know, taking a look at what potentials we have for potential curb lines and that type of thing, so that still allow some kind of flexibility for design. And again, that conversation is a dialogue that continues with you guys and everybody in the public to make sure that we're, you know, we're aligned. Areaway surveys, a lot of these, and we've started this process, regardless of what we do out here. Many of these properties, this is old downtown Boston, have what we call areaways, which is a basement that may extend beneath the sidewalk. Also, you know, sometimes it's called vault or something, but we call them areaways. And we need to get a sense of where they are and the condition, so that we can figure out when we're doing the sidewalk, what treatments we can do on top of them, if things need to be upgraded. Sometimes folks want to fill them in. We had that experience on Broad Street where, you know, some property owners wanted to fill in their areas, some wanted to maintain them. We needed to have very specific detail of how to treat the surface on top of them and work with property owners. So we'd like to continue, and Ashley and our design team have been reaching out to key abutters, but we want to make sure that we get into any and all of the properties out here to document where those areaways are, so that we can start taking a look at what our approach is for the plans. So, you know, we're planning to continue to monitor the use of the street, you know, the quote unquote barrels, how it's functioning and everything through the end of the year. We're going to be taking a look at that, how it's functioning with the pilot project, continuing to monitor traffic. And then hopefully, you know, by the end of the year, we'll have a good sense and we can figure out a direction on where we want to go starting in 2022 about the overall functionality of the street, you know, bikes, cars, all that type of thing. How do we balance all of that? And of course, paramount to any project that we do is continued public engagement. So we definitely want to don't want to be a stranger. We can be at your meetings. We intend to have some public meetings and everything, just to keep people in the loop and to keep that dialogue going. As I alluded to, here's what we're planning on through the rest of 2021 to take a look at as far as the monitoring the overall functionality of the street. We want to measure traffic volumes. Traffic volumes not just for vehicles, of course, but for pedestrians, for vehicles, and for bicycles. What's going on out there? What's the use? Are traffic volumes increasing from what we've seen? Are pedestrian volumes up? Are bike volumes up? Are they down? What's going on out there? We really want to get a sense of, especially since things are opening up right now, and compare those to the numbers that we had pre-COVID, as well as the numbers that we took during COVID. Vehicle speeds and travel times, we want to get a sense of that along the corridor. How fast vehicles are traveling, and how long it takes to get down the corridor, especially during peak periods where there might be some delay due to congestion at the intersections and that type of thing. We want to monitor that. We would definitely want to monitor the overall queuing. Are things backing up at the intersection? Is it running okay with the increased traffic? Curbside utilization. Who's using the curb? You can see here, in this picture, that someone's in there in an area where technically they're not supposed to be. We acknowledge that those types of things are happening. So we want to continue to monitor how the curbs are being utilized, when they're being utilized, and that type of thing. And we'll continue to monitor crashes out there, you know, from the safety component to see if there has been any crashes, because obviously that will inform what we do with the design and making sure that we have whatever we do for the new street will be as safe as possible. Just down there on the bottom right, it's a tentative schedule of what we're looking at for monitoring the traffic and everything out there. And, you know, June, August, October, December is what we're looking at. And what's nice about these is these correlate to the monthly counts that we've been collecting since the pilot was implemented. So now we can kind of apples to apples comparison, see what June 2021 looks like versus June 2020, and so on. And that's all I have for the presentation. But I'm sure that you may have some questions or comments for us, and we're happy to take those.
Great, thanks, Zach and Ashley. And before I open it up for questions, let me just reiterate what I had said to you in our earlier presentation, which is that we're encouraged to think that that you are looking at a 2-barrel design, as you put it. I assume a barrel and a lane are the same thing. You have described it as being each of these barrels being able to handle full vehicular traffic. So that's what our objective was. Working out loading, of course, is an ongoing thing. And I also mentioned the fact that we hope that you will also, because we do want bike lanes in our area, that you will also be exploring alternate locations for a bike lane, because our assumption remains that we're going to need the 2 lanes of vehicular traffic on State Street, and that the data will suggest that firmly, but we'll see. But we don't want to get stuck in a situation where we have to have both lanes as traffic and we have no idea what we're going to do with the bikes, because bikes are important. So we encourage you to please explore alternate routes for the bike lanes, which currently are difficult to achieve because of the direction of the streets in the area. But since you've made it clear that you're open to the idea of changing the direction of some of the streets, again, through public dialogue, that might open up some other possibilities. Anyway, I had said that to you all already in our previous presentation. Obviously, that was a presentation that was joined by Councillor Flynn, who has written a letter that we got a copy of today. I don't know if you received it yet, but it's basically supporting the things that we've talked about and our concerns. So we appreciate you taking those into consideration. I think you can stop sharing. Well, let's see if we have any other questions before that. Questions that others would like or comments of Ashley or Zach about State Street.
I have a question regarding that first slide where it talked about the percentage of crashes with bikes and pedestrians right there, 69%. Do you have a breakdown of bikes and pedestrians separately? Because I don't know what that 69% represents.
Yeah, sure. It was just that 69% of the injury crashes were bike and ped crashes. Do I have a break in front of me right now? I don't have a breakdown of what that 69%, like of that subset, which one were bikes and which were peds. But right. If you'd like that information, I can certainly get it to you. Yeah, sure.
I would, thank you.
Yeah, Zach. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, Mark, Wes Stimson, I have a comment.
Please.
I have had numerous times making the turn from Atlantic onto State, where I've taken 2 life cycles. It seems like the surface road light is favored substantially versus the turn from Atlantic onto State. So is that data being looked at also?
So this turn here, Atlantic to a left on State, and you feel that there's a lot of delay at this location?
Well, it seems like the delay on the Fitzgerald surface road causes the traffic to back up onto Atlantic.
It does, yeah.
So I'm sorry, I just want to understand. So you're getting caught here, or you're getting caught in the middle, or both, or I just want to.
The first.
Here?
Well, actually, you get caught there, and then you have to stop again before you cross.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, the issue is that there are 3 lanes there. One turns left, and the other 2, the right lanes, both have to squeeze onto a single lane now on State Street. And so what it does is it backs up onto Atlantic Ave, right, Wes? Yeah.
Correct.
So you got to look at that too, because
yep,
the problem isn't just State Street. The problem is that it backs up Atlantic Avenue. And currently there's no traffic, right? But,
okay.
Apologies for the interruption. Sorry, was it Wes?
It was Wes Stimson.
Oh, hi. So just out of curiosity, what time of day is it that you're seeing this?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it was like mid-morning. I was on my way over to Fresh Pond.
like to 9:30 or 10 or so?
Yeah, not
okay.
general time. Yeah.
On like a weekday.
On a weekday, yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry, it's good to know this information because there are different times and the signal timing changes based on time of day and things like that.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, we can definitely look into that for sure. And if there's anything we can do shorter term or whatever, we can take a look. Absolutely.
Matt, you have a question?
Yeah, actually, it's a good follow on to what Ashley just said, which is I'm curious if you looked at using time of day to change the traffic flow on the street. The way they do it, for example, in the Back Bay where Berkeley and Arlington are not, you can't stop there during the rush hour. It would seem like that would, you're still engineering the street to have drop off and loading all times a day. Whereas if you could leave multiple lanes open during the 9 or the 7 to 9 window and the 4 to 6 window, that would seem like it would solve a lot of problems. I will tell you, it is already getting impassable. Despite the fact that as the pandemic is opening, it's already faster to dump out and go down to Purchase Street, come around, get onto 93 and take Storer Drive if you're trying to get out of downtown. State Street is already starting to block up with the 1 lane there. So this isn't something that's going to happen later. It's already happening now. I'm curious of your thoughts on time of day and if you can use that.
Brilliant suggestion. And I think that's the ultimate. If I could stress what our approach is here in 2 words, I say it's a flexibility and adaptability. So that's what we want to look at with this type of design. So we're very open to whether it's time of day restrictions for loading or like functionality, or we can turn things on and off. That's ultimately what we're trying to look at. We want to have the space there that we can have this, and then we can program it as is needed for the function of that time of day. I'm also curious, when in particular are you experiencing, similar to Ashley's question, backups on State Street so that we can make sure that we're in tune to that?
It's sometimes in the afternoon when I'm going up to, out to Back Bay. Sometimes it's in the morning. A lot of times I'm leaving the property or downtown. It's in the late afternoon window.
When you say late afternoon, 3, 4?
3 to 5 to 6, that time of day.
3 to 6, and then also in the morning.
I don't drive in the morning. I drive much earlier than that, and I take the Pike because it's again faster to go. It's getting to the point where, and unfortunately, as Atlantic gets jammed up and the surface road gets jammed up, which it always does, that Purchase to 93 cycle is going to lose out when 93 starts backing up. So we're going to be bottlenecked here again within a couple of months.
Yeah, and as we noted, we're going to continue to obviously monitor the situation, but obviously having this feedback from you, which is why I want to just ask specific questions so that we can specifically take a look at it at certain times to figure out what's going on.
It's great to drive down Surface Road now. That used to take an hour to get from the TD Garden down to India Row, and now it takes 10 minutes or 5 minutes. But it's going to get back to the hour shortly.
Thank you.
Zach, how can we help you? Because we as a community are eyes and ears, 24/7 here. And if we can be of assistance, every time I drive down State Street and I see, people parked in the bike lane or everything jammed up because an Uber is unloading people in the middle of the single lane, I say to myself, actually I say to my wife, and she's tired of hearing me, this is, useful information. Look at this photograph. She would stop doing this, please. Is there any way we can be useful to the resolution of this situation?
I mean, just to take it back up front, you know, any feedback that you have about the pilot stuff that we hope to implement. If you have any thoughts on that, we'd like to get that, because basically we're hoping to move forward with that very soon. So if there's anybody who has any thoughts or comments or concerns about that, let us know. As far as you know, the information and stuff that you've been telling us is great. You know, we're monitoring out there. We're not out there 24/7. We're going to monitor at particular times and everything. Ashley's in the office. I was in the office earlier today. I always make a point to walk down State Street at different points during the day to see what's going on and make observations. You know, I was watching stuff on my lunch break and watching the cars, a lot of like Uber Eats and stuff, picking stuff up at Sweet Green that was going on and everything. So anything that you can tell us, these quote unquote anecdotal stories of stuff that's going on and everything, let us know. There's no amount of information that is not useful to us to help us make these decisions, because there's, you know, we're not going to make this perfect, obviously, but we want to balance that with how we can make it as functional as possible. So yeah, share the information with us. You certainly have Ashley's contact information, my contact information. Let us know. Shoot us an email, give us a phone call, whatever. Yeah, you want to shoot us a picture like, hey, this happens every day at, you know, 7 o'clock in the morning. What should we do about this? And that's the point of putting this pilot out here and doing this too, is really for us to get a sense, and we can make these tweaks. This is why we want to make those adjustments based on what we've heard and what we've observed, so that we can work with you. And, you know, because there's always like an adjustment period too. Like, you know, but before we actually put curb out there and put these loading zones and find out that stuff doesn't work, now we have the opportunity to be like, oh, you know, maybe that didn't work so great. Why don't we move this over here? We can put this over here. So that's the dialogue we want to have right now. So yes, let us know.
Thanks. Wes, did you have another question?
Mark, can I ask a question?
I had a question.
Please, Joanne, do. Yeah. Joanne?
Thanks, Zach. I wanted to understand, what's the thinking behind changing the direction of Central Street? That traffic will go to India and then get on State Street.
It's mainly to alleviate some of the trips that were generated to go down State Street, because now, like, you know, one of the key destinations that folks were getting to was the parking garage, which is the star here, as well as other destinations on Broad Street. So now if folks don't have to go down State Street and take the left on the Broad, because we also observed from our traffic counts this is a fairly heavy move. Now it gives people an opportunity, a different opportunity, to just shoot up this way, and now they can get to the garage, or they can get to other points on State Street. So it's another release valve, if you will, for traffic to go.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys going to do further analysis, because I think the challenge in this whole area is one, you know, State Street is this big run from Surface Road to Congress Street, but more importantly, you have all these short blocks across the Greenway that create issues. And I think we got to see, as traffic increases, which is going to, the impacts. And one of the other things I've observed on that left turn you talked about on Broad Street from State, it's not only people trying to get access to that garage, many people are making the run all the way down Broad Street to, it's not on the map, Franklin Street, to make a run up past Congress to the garage, you know, the Post Office Square garage.
Yep, sure.
So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wes, you had another question?
Yeah, I just have one quick one. Going forward, as far as the test, how are you going to evaluate letting traffic on the bikeway? Or aren't you saying you're going to let traffic on the bikeway as part of the evaluation?
We're not proposing to take out the bikeway at this point in time. We are going to continue to monitor the traffic situation on the street, whether it's bikes, pedestrians, or vehicles.
Okay, so you're not going to test one lane versus 2 lanes?
No, we're just going to continue to monitor the traffic, and then through the end of the year, and then from that we'll continue the dialogue and everything with everybody, and then that'll help us to inform how we actually program the street.
So
okay,
I think what you're hearing from us, Ashley and Zach, is that traffic study has to take into account the implications of backing up onto Atlantic Ave.
Absolutely.
Okay. As long as that's part
100%.
of it.
Yep.
Yeah. Fernando, you had a question?
Yeah, so I just had with the directional change on Central Street, isn't that street usually where trucks park to load? I feel like there's a decent amount of loading on that area. So if people are coming off and turning down Central Street, and I've seen it numerous times where trucks are kind of parked in the street on Central Street. So if you're coming from where you take that left onto Broad and then you're going towards Central, the way that it typically is right now, they have to wait. So wouldn't that potentially have more traffic on that surface road trying to turn a right down to Central Street if there's a loading area there as well and the trucks aren't parking like how they're supposed to be?
Good question. So I assume that your traffic study, if you're changing directions for either Central or Chatham, your traffic study would look at those areas as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. There, Central Street in that section, not a lot of traffic volumes. It is primarily a loading street. It's kind of back of house for some places and everything's kind of a sleepy street. So yeah, in general, obviously, if we're reversing the direction, that's going to open it up that there'll be likely more people traveling the street. And yeah, that'll have to be balanced with the loading activity. Obviously, there is designated space for loading on there. If someone is illegally blocking a lane or something, of course, that's an issue. That'd be an issue anywhere in the city. But yes, to Mark's point, we're going to monitor that situation when we open it up to figure out, is this, we're going to take counts there, see how it's going, how and make observations and that type of thing. And again, any feedback from you guys. But it's just something we want to try to see if we can alleviate some of the traffic on there and balance some of the routing through the neighborhood.
Right, and we'll look forward to see. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I would like to just follow up on the Central Street issue. I've had discussions with the folks from the Custom House, as well as the folks on the other side of the street. And there is a big concern about changing the direction of Central Street. So I would want you to make sure that we have discussions with these abutters, because we keep saying it's a sleepy street, but it's quite active as far as they're concerned. Maybe it doesn't have the volumes that other streets have, but nonetheless, it's a functioning street. So I think It's important. It's very important. I have one other thing. And first of all, I want to thank you, Zach, and Ashley for the work that you're doing, working with us and coming before the council. And we appreciate your due diligence here. And secondly, on the surveys that you've or have conducted in the past, you said 199 people. I'd like to see if you have future surveys, if there's some way we can't work together so that we could get larger volumes in responding to the survey. I think the last time, the only way you could access it was via the government website, the .gov website. If there was something else we could do to increase participation.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to hear from everybody. So if you have ideas about, right now, the surveys on our website or whatever, in the past, we've done, printed copies and everything. However you think that we can reach people, we're happy to work with you on that. Yeah, and also just coming back to the Central thing, was there particular concerns about the reasons that they might have stated that they were concerned, or just general concern about changing it?
Well, one particular thing regards the Custom House with the valet parking. Mm-hmm. They park at the Harbor Garage, which means they come out and then they go east. Yes, they go east on Central Street, and it's a quick shot over to the Harbor Garage. And they're concerned, well, if that changes, then they're going to have to extend the trip of the valet parking and so forth. So
gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Well, obviously we're going to have that conversation, but yeah, I'd just like to know what the specific concerns are so that we can figure it out. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we'll look forward to seeing those that traffic information as it evolves. Appreciate all the hard work on this.
Absolutely, of course, yeah.
And thank you for coming. And if you want to stop sharing.
Yeah, I will stop sharing now. Thank you very
Great.
much for everybody's time and the feedback. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Laura.
Before we have after we have the climate resilience task force update, John Romano is going to fill us in. And let me just say that the task force is in reasonably organized position at the moment to start soliciting involvement by the full cadre of waterfront stakeholders. Thank you very much to Rob and to the rest of the group who've been putting that list together, including Alice. I don't know if Alice is on. Alice Brown from
No.
Harvard Now. No, she is filling out the list. So we're going to have a meeting the next couple of weeks to be able to organize an expanded group to reach out and try to get everyone involved and hopefully get commitments for ongoing involvement once we get our funding, which we hope is going to be released to us in October. So anybody else want to talk to the task force at the moment? I think there's more to come, but that's probably a current update, right? Okay. John Romano, a couple things that we have on our agenda for you to tell us about, which includes the cannabis thing and public meetings and stuff like that. Tell us, if you will, please.
Well, hello everyone. First of all, it's nice to be here. One thing I want to start off by saying to everyone is, first and foremost, before we get to the cannabis piece, we do have a number of vaccination clinics that are around the city of Boston. If anyone's having trouble finding a vaccination clinic, a vaccination appointment time, anything along those lines, please feel free to contact me so I can help get you set up with one to make sure that we're helping all of our residents get vaccinated during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm just pulling up the information here. So I apologize. As you all know, I have to move away from my screen just to be able to do that. So the proposal is at 21 Milk Street. So this is an already established cannabis facility, dispensary. So it has already been established. It is changing the name from Patriot Care to Cannabis. Is one of the proposals. And additionally, they're looking to remove the following conditions from their license. They're looking to respectfully request a change of adult use condition number 2 to permit the sale of multi-packs of pre-rolled cannabis products. And they also are looking to remove the adult use condition number 3, which requires a $35 minimum purchase amount. They may offer many products under $35, and this condition prevents equal access to these products. So they're essentially asking the community, they're going through, as they're already established, they're not going through the similar process a new cannabis organization would go through. It's a separate process as they're trying to remove some provisos. But there's essentially an abutters meeting that is going to be held on June 7th at 6 p.m. Marc and Susanne, I already had sent you the flyer from there. While this, while this site is not in the Wharf district, it does abut you all, and it's close enough to you all that I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of it. Just making sure that everyone in the community knows when we have something like this go.
John, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Is that particular location medical use only now? Is that, because that was my understanding when that went in, it was for medical use only.
I think right now the license type is a retail recreational cannabis dispensary, but again, where it's not in my area, so I don't have all the fine details with it. That's currently what I have on the flyer for it. I will make sure to get that answer for you, but I believe that it is recreational.
Okay. Fernando, you don't know, do you?
I actually looked it up, and what I saw was that it was medical already.
Yeah.
I recognized the name, and I knew they had a medical permit. So obviously for me, anything that pops up cannabis, my ears kind of are paying attention to, but I thought it was medical and not recreational.
That was my understanding.
Yeah. Like I said, I will double check to be sure, because where it's outside of our normal neighborhood, we might not have been aware of what was, if it had gone through a process change. So I just want to I just have that information that I've been given so far with it.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. The other big announcement, and I know that everyone has seen it so far, and I'm sure many on this call have been reacting to the announcement from there, is the opening of both our state and our city. So at the end of this month, we'll be opening fully back to what was pre-pandemic conditions beforehand, with no capacity caps, no limitations to businesses. The one caveat that I have been telling people as I have gone through is, again, you know, as anything with COVID, we are very hopeful. This is really good news. I'm very excited for this trend. I always just like to throw out there again and be like, this is all based on public health data. You know, we are very optimistic this will be the date that we will open up to full capacity. But again, everything is based on public health data as we go forward. So please continue to plan appropriately as we go through. As places have questions upon what reopening means, some of it is just as easy as, yes, you are able to reopen to exactly what we had beforehand, especially when it came to events or some businesses. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me individually. Every place, especially with the businesses that we have here on this call, are going to be a little bit niche comparative to some of the others around the city. So I'd be happy to work with you all to make sure that you're getting the answers you need to be able to reopen the way that you need. And I know that I just had a question about vaccination sites. What I will do from here is once I finish talking, I'll end up sending in where the vaccination sites are, or if anybody has space for a pop-up and they're looking to potentially have a pop-up vaccination site near them, I can see if that's a possibility with our public health team as well. And those are the updates I have for you all.
Great, John. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For John? Thank you, John, for keeping us involved. We are planning on making available our upcoming meetings for the mayoral candidates to address us and tell us a little bit about their vision for Boston. We have 3 sets at the moment, and didn't you say actually that John Santiago is actually scheduled for July?
Yes. Yes.
So Councilor Asabi George is set up for June, and then
June.
2 in July, 2 at our meeting in July. They'll be staggered. And Susanne is still reaching out to the other candidates to secure times on their calendars. So hopefully they will all agree to join us. And then there's going to be, we think, a candidates forum that organized by the North End and possibly us as well, if that happens. That's still being worked on, right, Susanne?
We're working on it. It would be a joint forum with the North End, both the business and residents groups, New Row and New Nick, as well as Ward 3 and the Wharf District Council. So it will be a forum, and it's tentatively scheduled for June 23rd, but we're trying to put all the pieces together. So hopefully we'll get everybody.
Yeah. It's obviously more complicated to get 6 candidates together at one time than this other approach, which we will be doing anyway, which is to ask them to join us for June, July, and
August. So hopefully we'll get the others.
And Susanne, are you do you have all of the contact points at this point? Because I think you had some question about how to get to one of them, and I think that Rick could probably help. Is that right, Rick? Do you know all of how to reach everybody?
I know how to reach Rick.
Yeah, Rick, you're on.
I love how I'm Marc's de facto go-to government guy now.
Aren't you? Aren't you?
All things government. Yeah, we can figure that out. We are, and I think I've mentioned this to some of you offline. We are working on forum as well. So, but yeah, absolutely helpful. Suzanne, you can call me anytime.
Thank you. Yes, I have his number.
Yes, great. Well, I know you have Rick's. I just, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. So our next meeting is June 15th. I will actually not be able to be there because I'm going to be in the air going to visit my mother's for her 92nd. But life goes on. Any other comments, things that people bring up? Oh, Rob, yes.
Mark, yeah. I'd like to. I just want to share some news that just became official today. So this summer, we're actually really happy that the North End Music and Performing Arts Center is going to be standing up a satellite location in the Wharf District at the former Harborside Learning Lab site on the water side of the Harbor Garage. So they'll be running summer camp programs out of the space, using it for rehearsal space, etc. for July, the months of July and August, and we're excited to have them, and they're excited to sort of they already have students from the neighborhood. I think they have some students from Harbor Towers, obviously plenty from the North End, Charlestown, and they're excited about growing their footprint within the Wharf District. And I want to thank John for sort of making that match. So like I said, this is going to be July and August. It just sort of became official today, so we'll have some more information as they ramp up for their summer programs. Then I'll can share more at the next meeting, or if there's anything additional to share in the interim, I can get that information to Suzanne to pass along.
Terrific, Rob. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Fernando, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so just want to give you guys a heads up where we are. June 2nd, we should be finding out if we're going to be going in front of the Boston Cannabis Board for our presentation that we're eagerly waiting to do. They told us we are second in line, so all signs point towards us going in June. If not, we'll be on their agenda for July, but just wanted to kind of let you guys know.
Great. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, terrific. Well, happy beginning of what feels like summer, and look forward to the conversations with the candidates on June 15th. Thank you all.